All right, let's turn our attention now to France and the historic outcome of the first round of elections that was held yesterday. SABC News correspondent Ross Cullen is in Paris and joins us live now. Ross, thank you so much for your time. I mean, some analysts view this decision to call the snap election as dicey when it comes to President Emmanuel Macron. And let's look at this particular result, especially the first round of these parliamentary elections, and how significant is it?
A shockwave election result is how it can be characterised based on the first round results. The National Rally are now the preeminent political force in France. There's no denying it. The strength of support for the populists across the whole country, and they're very likely to win the second round, the decisive round of the election, when it's held next Sunday, the 7th of July. They are on track for at least a relative majority in the lower house in the National Assembly. They could potentially even get an absolute majority when they would be able to implement their fiscal plans, their financial plans, their anti-immigration policies without any fear of being voted down by the opposition. If they have that majority, that is what Marine Le Pen so dearly wants. She then would be able to install her Prime Minister. Jordan Bardella, the party leader. President Macron would be forced to work with the far right in power in the position of Prime Minister. So that would be very uncomfortable for the French president.
Let's look at some of these, possible significant changes that could come when it comes to policy, given the fact that, there have been some very bold statements that the far right has actually been making.
Yes, they are an anti-immigration party. They have always pursued anti-immigration policies. They want to drastically reduce not just illegal immigration, but legal migration as well. They want to crack down on dual nationals and people applying for French passports. They want to ban people with two nationalities, French passport and, for example, a South African or British passport, from holding some of the top jobs, holding some of the strategic posts in the civil service and the government. They also want to slash $2 billion off how much France pays the EU. They want to repeal President Macron's pension reforms, return the retirement age back down to 62. It was raised by President Macron to 64 last year. They also did originally want to exempt everybody under the age of 30 from paying income tax, but to pursue such a policy and mean that the huge working population under the age of 30 not paying any tax, that is off the table for now. That's been put on pause. Also, they have agreed not to start dismantling wind turbines. They say that they will only start dismantling wind turbines when they come to the end of their life. They are not particularly pro pursuing lots of climate change policies like Emmanuel Macron's party were, for example, signing off on huge offshore and onshore wind farm zones. President Macron knows that all those policies are likely to come under pressure if the far right do come into power. They are Eurosceptic. They will certainly be trying to increase the security controls, beef up the border and clamp down on people trying to come into France. We are in for a completely different set of policies than have been pursued by the moderate centre-left, the moderate centre-right and the moderate centre over the last few decades. If the National Rally do come to power, we'd have our first far-right government here in France since the Second World War.
What has been, the reaction to this particular result, particularly when you look at, Marine Le Pen, for example, as well as President Macron?
Marine Le Pen says that nothing is won yet. She is determined to make sure that all her campaigners, all her candidates continue to mobilise throughout this week to make sure that they can get as many MPs as possible in the second round. We have also heard from the far left. They are part of the left-wing coalition, which is the far left, the Greens, Communists and Socialists. And we did see big demonstrations in many cities across France on Sunday night, a reaction to the success of the far right. There have been calls for candidates to stand aside, some people to retire their candidacies, get out of the way to make sure there is not a split vote when it comes to this call to block the far right. The centrists and the far left and the left wing want as few candidates as possible so their support can coalesce around one person to try to have the best chance of possible of blocking the far right from coming to power. But there's so many political manoeuvres to take place, so much horse trading, so much going on in terms of how the second round might play out. There is a lot at stake, and the possibility also remains that there could also be a hung parliament with no one party getting a majority.
Quite an interesting development there, Ross, and let's see what happens on Sunday. As you say that, it may just go anywhere here. And of course, we'll be watching those developments through your eyes. Thank you so much for that. That was my colleague, SABC News correspondent, Ross Cullen, there, giving us the very latest from France.